I want to welcome everyone to our webinar, Earning the Gold Crown, Best Practices from an Ideal Chapter. And so tonight we have a few panelists. We have Tanya Sue Maestas, who is our current ASDA President, but she was also the immediate past President of the Houston Chapter, last year's Ideal winner. And we also have Tiffany Pham, who is also at Houston, and she is their Gold Crown Chair. We have Sarah Fodar, who is our Council and Membership Chair, and also will be Chair of the Gold Crown Award Committee. And then I'm Danielle Bauer. I'm going to serve as the facilitator, and I'm ASDA's Director of Membership and Marketing, and I also participate on the Gold Crown Award Committee. So before we get started, I just wanted to share how you can go about asking questions. There is a box in your control panel for questions, so you can go ahead and submit those at any point. And after Tanya Sue and Tiffany present, we'll answer questions in the order that they're asked. All right, so at this point, I am going to turn the screen over to Tanya Sue and Tammy to get started. Let's see. All right, Tanya Sue, it should be over to you.
All right. Yep. Is it showing now? Okay, good.
It is.
There it is. All right, well, welcome everyone. So Tiffany and I are really excited to be here tonight to talk a little bit about our experience in applying for Gold Crown and kind of just Gold Crown overall in general. I know that maybe if you're already in the process of applying, you've seen a lot of the rules and the do's and don'ts and kind of the ins and outs of everything that has to do with Gold Crown. But we're here to answer any questions and kind of just give a little personal touch as far as what we did for Houston ASDA. So like Danielle mentioned, my name is Tanya Sue Maestas. I am the immediate past president from Houston ASDA, and it is my honor to be serving as this year's National ASDA President. So what is a Gold Crown Award? It's an award that's presented to an individual or a chapter in recognition for their accomplishments, and there's a variety of different categories. The categories include Media, Chapter Achievements, and Delegate of the Year. And each category requires a separate application, but there are some awards that don't require an application at all. And so there's a little asterisk next to Delegate of the Year, and this is kind of something that the Board of Trustees kind of review. They look at all the delegates that served in the last year and look at their accomplishments, and they kind of narrow down all the accomplishments that they've done and pick somebody who was absolutely outstanding from the year. And I forgot to preface, but I wanted to give a small little shout out to Kyle Larson, who was out of Colorado. He was their chapter president a few years ago and District 9 trustee, but he developed a great skeleton for this presentation, and I think that it's really key, and we'll be kind of using it throughout the rest of the night. So our Media Gold Crown Awards are pretty bulky. There's a lot of different awards that you can win and that you can apply for. And so we have Best Newsletter and Competition, Best Chapter Blog, Website Design, and kind of just an array of different awards that you can win with your application. And there is a Best Feature Article, Best Blog Post, and Best News Article that don't require an application, and they're kind of reviewed a little bit separately and a little bit different from what the applied awards are. And so the way that you can apply for the Media Gold Crowns is to complete your submission form, and some awards may require submission of additional material or detailed response. And so, for like the newsletter, you'll have to submit a newsletter for review, and also if you want your blog to be reviewed or your website, or if you have any kind of social media that you'd like to review, you need to include a URL so that way the committee who is reviewing these applications can have a direct link to them. And also for the improved newsletter, there's a 300-word response for the most improved newsletter. Then we also have our Chapter Achievement Award, and so this is where I guess the big one is. This is where the Ideal Chapter is, and also the Most Improved Chapter. We also have a Rookie Chapter of the Year, and kind of all things that have to do with chapter achievements. And so this is a really this is a bulk load of where a lot of the Gold Crown awards come from. And the way that you can apply for these is you complete the submission form, you submit a PDF application. Again, you may require additional material, and you must submit a hard copy as well for the outstanding application design and most creative application. So if you want to win from one of those categories, you have to submit a hard copy. Also, if you're applying for to become the Ideal ASDA Chapter, you have to submit a 1-minute video, which is really kind of cool, and they showcase, or at least in the last 2 years, they showcase the top 5 1-minute video submissions, which was really neat and really a nice touch to the gold crown ceremony that we have. And for most improved, you should submit 1 to 2 paragraphs. And so it should be noted that if you're applying for Ideal Chapter or most improved, they can't both be applied for. You have to apply for either or. And so you have to decide whether you believe that your chapter has or is most qualified for the most improved chapter, which you will apply directly to that, or if you want to win the Ideal Chapter, you can also just apply for that too. And so the eligibility to apply for these awards is that you must have your updated constitution and bylaws on file with central office, and programs and events must have been conducted between January 1st and December 31st, 2017, so this last year cycle. And programs events must be organized by ASDA chapters, and the applications cannot be submitted by any national leader. And so if you have somebody that is on your executive team at your chapter, you have to have somebody who is not a national leader submit that application. And so I'm going to send it over to Tiffany, who was our Gold Crown application chair last year at Houston, and she'll talk about a little bit about her experience on putting that application together. It took a lot of time and was a lot of fun, but she'll talk a little bit about that. So I'll send it over to you, Tiffany.
All right. Hey, everybody. Hopefully by now y'all have found the ASDA website page that shows all of the submission guidelines and criteria and whatnot. That it gives you a really good breakdown of what the committee is looking for when they're judging the criteria. So what you're going to want to do is, like Tanya was saying, is that the Gold Crown awards are separated into 2 different applications. There's a media application, and then there's the chapter achievement application. So just remember, there's 2 separate applications you have to apply for. And the Gold Crown Committee, the National Committee, has made it very streamlined for us to submit it. Seriously, just go to the website and download the guidelines and criteria and have it printed out right next to you, and just follow that, and it'll basically give you a breakdown of all of the stuff you need for every single category. And it's something that you definitely need to refer to a lot whenever you're putting together this application. It's exactly what the committee looks for. It's what they're judging, and if you just make sure everything is in order and organized, it just makes everything easier for them, and then it heightens your chances of winning in certain categories and overall as well. On the last couple of slides, Tanya was talking about how there's an Ideal ASDA Award and the Most Improved and Rookie Chapter of the Year. Those are like all-encompassing categories, but the bulk of what y'all will be doing will be putting together the separate Chapter Achievement Awards, which will be in chapter activities, chapter advocacy, pre-dental activities, membership and communications and stuff like that. But the website itself will have the breakdown of what y'all need to be looking at. So this slide is talking about what exactly you need to be submitting. And so whatever application or software y'all are using to create this application, you can use whatever you want. You can use InDesign, you can use Microsoft Word, you can use Adobe Illustrator, you can use anything as long as it creates a PDF, because that's what you're going to be submitting electronically. That is going to have a hard deadline of January 8th of 2018. And when it says you can also submit a hard copy, that's when they mean if you're applying for the formatting. There's 2 formatting categories that you're going for, like Most Creative Award and Outstanding Application Design. That's where we're just talking about your layout and your formatting. So if you're not applying for those awards, then you don't have to submit a hard copy, but if you are, then that has to be postmarked by January 8th, which is the due the deadline. And so if you are applying for the hard copy, definitely make sure to take into account that when you're sending your PDF to get printed at whatever site y'all decide to use, that there's going to be different scaling that each website uses, that each company uses. So you have to make sure that your scaling is correct, or else when you get it printed out, stuff's going to get cut off, and just some formatting issues will happen. Like either it'll get cut off, or your page will get shrunken, or it will just get distorted to where it's not like a perfect rectangle or stuff like that. It's just things you have to make sure of when you're looking at which company to go for when thing. And also in regards to which company you're looking for, each company has a deadline of how long it's going to take for them to print out all the stuff that you submit to them. Some can be done in as little as 1 day. Some of them will take 3 days to a week, even just like business days as well. You have to pay attention to exactly what they mean by how long it takes them to process your order, and then also how long it will take them to ship your order to you, because if they're shipping it to you, then you have to ship it to the committee as well. And just remember that when you get it shipped out, it has to be postmarked by January 8th. And you guys literally have free reign to design this application however you want. Hopefully you have a really solid committee that is starting to put together your application. Literally anything y'all want to do, it's your own little brainchild. Like, you're showcasing your chapter's greatest achievements for this entire year. I mean, it's however you can make it look awesome. You're just trying to make your words pop on the screen, make it stand out a little bit more, and stuff like that. There's really no wrong way to format it besides just making it really messy. As long as you can be as creative as you want, as long as you make it organized and neat and stuff like that. So this is talking about organization again. There's 6 fundamental pages that you'll have to have, and that's the 6 different categories that each chapter achievement award is based upon. And in the submission and criteria breakdown sheet, it's going to tell you exactly what they want for each of these categories that you need to include, and some helpful guidelines of what you need to include as well that they're looking for. And you also are going to have a lot of past winner examples on the ASDA website page as well that you can refer to. You can see what they included, how they highlighted certain events. When it comes to those first 6 pages, that's where the bulk of this application is encompassing. That's what the committee, I believe, is really going to be looking at, just the content. And so there's going to be events that you want to showcase a lot, and there's going to be events that you want to just kind of summarize as much as possible. I know all of y'all want to make each event sound really, really great and all that, but definitely showcase the ones that will make y'all pop. And then the application has a maximum of 50 pages, 25 double-sided, and they're pretty strict about keeping it at maximum 50 pages. I think ours clocked in somewhere in the 40s or a little bit less than 40. So you don't have to like maximize it, but the more supporting material you have, the better. And we'll get into what actually is supporting material in a little bit in the presentation. So this goes back into keeping everything organized. You don't have to make a story for every single event. Keep everything very concise. The judges are going to be reading 66 of these applications, and if you make it very difficult for them to read it, it's going to start blurring to them, and it's not going to make your chapter pop. It's not going to win you any points if you make it more difficult for them. So things like highlighting what's new, and not so much because this year there is a separate, that you have to decide if you are applying for Ideal ASDA Chapter or if you're applying for Most Improved Ideal ASDA Chapter. And what makes the difference between the two is that if you're applying for Ideal ASDA, that means that your chapter has a very strong history. It believes that it encompasses very strong efforts in every single category of the main 6, and you feel like you have a strong chance of being the Ideal ASDA Chapter. And what Most Improved is if you're just like a newer, organized, maybe a couple years out chapter, and you feel like you've made significant strides in all of your ASDA efforts, but you don't feel like your chapter has quite hit the top 6 in each category in activities, then the Most Improved Chapter would be probably the award that y'all decide to apply for instead of Ideal. If you're applying for Most Improved, then definitely mark which activities you have improved upon. Mark which ones you've added, which ones you've done to make your chapter better. And so going into what supporting material can be, this is where you show basically the spirit of your chapter. This is where all of the photos you've taken over this entire year, all of the multimedia stuff y'all have been doing, go back in and take screenshots of it, and whatever events that y'all believe is what sets y'all apart, makes you unique, what y'all are very, very proud of, what makes y'all ideal, is what you would be putting in the supporting material to make each activity pop. Because in the first 6 pages, it's very dense. It's hard for the judges to see what makes your chapter, like, what makes it so unique and ideal and great. So the supporting material is your chance to change the text y'all put and make it into something just to give it more character and make it better. So this is just some of the examples of what y'all could include. Our last year's application just had a ton of pictures. Our theme of last year's picture was a road trip, a year on the road with Houston ASDA, and so we made funny little categories for the events that represented landmarks of what each stop was along the road. And so with that, we made a little theme of like a scrapbook for the road trip, and we just included fun little road trip signages, symbols, and stuff like that. And we just made everything kind of look more fun, not just have everything be words, and just it gives your application more character. But there's definitely different ways to showcase the supporting material. Go ahead and move on, please. So the guidelines and criteria, that's what I was talking about earlier. That's on the website. This is from last year's. This year's is a couple more pages, so I didn't want to include it on this slide just because it's just too much to have right here. Y'all already can't really see the 2 pages right there. But this is what y'all need to be referring to when you make your applications. And it's really best to categorize your application when you're putting it together by these chapter achievement categories. It just makes things easier to organize if you have it in the correct spot as you're putting together your application. Go on, please. These are just more, that was more of a zoom in on the guideline criteria. So this is an example of another chapter's membership and communication page. So this is what we talk about when we say this is the bulk of the application or of the text. They made it very prominent on what was new and what was improved. That would be fantastic for if you're applying for most improved. You can also still add it if you're going for most ideal. it'll make it stand out. It wouldn't hurt y'all to put it like that. It's just something to showcase what y'all want the judges to focus on. So if you have it on every single event or activity, then it's not going to showcase too much on exactly what y'all want them to focus on. So definitely use it as needed. This was very straightforward. You can have a little bit more formatting on it, but remember, it has to be organized, has to be neat, easy to read, and stuff like that.
All right. Thanks, Tiff.
This is
so
your slide, I remember now.
kind of what Tiffany was saying, where you want to add that supporting material, showcasing what makes you unique. You know, if you have imagery or any kind of logos or anything that you're using on your social media that kind of pops, or anything that's unique to your individual chapter, this is where you would put it on the supporting material. And so I just included two little pieces that I personally have enjoyed. This is the Career Advancement and Leadership Conference that Oklahoma had this past year, which was a good success for them. And I mean, that's a cute little picture that they had going on. And this is a picture of our provisional, which is a new newsletter that we've launched this year at Houston ASDA. And so this is kind of like a timeline that you want to start gathering your information around January 1st. So you should have already started doing that. You know, you want to make sure that you document everything from day one and kind of keep it up to date as much as you can. And while that might be a little bit difficult, because I know that we're all in dental school, if you can keep it up, that is really best for you and for your chapter when it comes to filling out that application. So you want to start assembling and designing your application maybe in August, maybe earlier. But again, you know, things can get kind of crazy with school starting up around that time. So it might be a little bit later as well too, and that's okay. And you kind of want to just add placeholders for upcoming events. You can put placeholders along the way in your application that will just kind of keep it there, so that way you can add it in later. You want to print your application around mid-November or earlier. Like Tiffany mentioned, you might have to send it out to get printed and shipped to you. And so if that's the case, it'll take a little bit more time to get back to you, and it'll take some time for you to send it out. And apply essentially by mid or late December. Deadline is January 8th, and don't forget, you want to really take into account how much time it's going to take for you to mail in a hard copy. And so who should assemble the application? There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You can create a committee. You can have your executive team kind of come together and do that as well too. But really, I think what we've seen in the past few years is a committee coming together and hashing this out is really the best way to do it. So like I mentioned on the other slide, it's good to keep records for your individual activities throughout the year. And if you have committees for different areas, so if like you have a pre-dental area, an advocacy area, it'd be important for those individual teams to kind of keep detailed records, and it kind of divvies up the work kind of along the way throughout the year. And so you can have a Gold Crown application committee, and they can be appointed or elected, and there's just a lot of hands that kind of can come together and put it all together at the end of the day. And reach out to your officers. You want to reach out to your immediate past president. They're the ones that kind of have seen the history of your chapter throughout the last few years, and your executive board and other chapter leaders. Those are the ones that have probably gone to all, if not most, of the bulk of the events that your chapter has had. And so they're the ones that are kind of most knowledgeable and might be able to remember maybe a few of those events that weren't documented along the way throughout the year that you can add in when you're applying. And so it is extensive. It is a lot of work to put these applications together. But at the end of the day, it's really cool to kind of see them all come together when they're submitted. And so you don't have to be electronic savvy. You know, use what you have access to. You know, here at Houston, we use a running Google Doc. We kind of keep it as simple as possible, and use anything that works for you. If you want to export it as a PDF to upload, you can do that, and use programs that you're familiar with. If you're comfortable using Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, you can hang on to that. Or if you have somebody who is knowledgeable and knows how to use Adobe programs like InDesign or Photoshop, or someone who's willing to learn how to do that, I think that that's a really nice thing to add into your application, and have someone kind of edit those photos along the way. And when you're publishing everything, you can use Walmart, any kind of company that will allow you to print out your application. You want to make sure you're being creative. You want to make something unique to your chapter, and make sure that your uniqueness is kind of being displayed across to the committee who's reviewing the applications. And as a reminder, national leaders can help, but at the end of the day, they cannot submit the application. So tips, kind of summarize everything, is to start early. Make sure you follow the rules. It's really important to reference those pages that Tiffany mentioned earlier. You want to make sure that you're tailoring your application to those individual bullet points, so that way you make sure that you're getting the most points overall throughout your application. And make sure you don't exceed 50 pages. You know, we want to be respectful of the time of those who are reviewing the applications. And so they are going to review about 66 applications, give or take. And so we should be respectful of the other chapters, but also you want to make sure that you're following the rules, since that's one of the rules that's on there. Videos, again, should be no longer than 1 minute, and you want to make sure that you submit it on time. We all know in dental school that deadlines are key, and so this is a really key deadline as well too. Use guidelines and criteria to guide yourself with next year's chapter's activities and growth. Don't reuse any material or ideas, and always look at gallery of previous winners for different ideas of different events that you can include in your chapters. If you had an opportunity to join us at our National Leadership Conference in Chicago, you may have had the opportunity to go to the idea sharing breakout session, which was a nice opportunity for different schools and different representatives from the schools to share ideas and different activities that they're doing at their chapters. And I know that that's always one of my favorite parts from our national conferences, because I always come back with a lot of good ideas, and everyone always comes back with a lot of good ideas to try and implement at our individual chapters to see if we can do it and add more activities for our students. Make it fun, you know, make it unique, make it to what your chapter is. Make sure you proofread. Grammar is important, so check for spelling, check for grammar, make sure it's complete, and share it. You want to make sure that you share it to other chapters, to your deans. You want to make sure that they're knowledgeable that you're applying for this award, and that you're doing a lot of great things at your local chapter.
Make sure
and
to share
at the end
it
of the
with
day, you're trying to. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I said make sure to share it with your chapter as well, because you don't want to be just sharing it with the national ASDA, because your chapter is the one that created this or allowed this application to be possible. So definitely give it back to them so they can see how they're being showcased.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, you really would just want to showcase your chapter's story. And so include a lot of pictures, include the events that you've had throughout the year. And while it's nice to win Gold Crown Awards, it's really rewarding to get that. You really it's nice to see at the end of the day, when you've completed this application, everything that your chapter has accomplished throughout the year. And so even if you don't win a Gold Crown Award, you'll have something that you can kind of look at in the future and kind of reminisce on those memories. And it's almost like a scrapbook. It's something that you can keep for the next few years or forever and kind of reference later on and see how much your chapter has grown over time. And so if you have any questions at any time, we'll open it up here in a second. I'm going to send it back to Danielle, but this is our information. We had a lot of fun working with each other last year and with our entire chapter. This isn't something that both of us did overnight. This is something that our chapter kind of grew over time to grow as a chapter. All we really did was put an application together to showcase and highlight a lot of the cool things that we were able to do in the last few years at Houston ASDA and in the last year. We were doing a lot of fun things. And we were creating a lot of events that I think that our students were really able to enjoy throughout the year.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me see.
I can change it back to me.
Oh, I'm sending it your way, yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay. No, it's okay. So at this time, we'll open it up to questions. So again, if you have a question, just go ahead and type it into that area in your control panel. So it looks like we actually do have a question already. So this person said, so if our 50-page application is being submitted via PDF, do we also need to print it? And he's asking, do we only need to print it if we're applying, if we're applying to creative application and outstanding application design? And I think any one of us could answer that. That's correct. So If you are not applying for those two categories, that outstanding application design or creative application, you do not need to print your application. You only need to submit the PDF. But if you want to apply to those two categories, we do need to receive the printed copy. And I want to clarify on the deadline because we get this question a lot. So the PDF has to be submitted by the deadline of January 8th. There's no wiggle room there. We have to receive it by January 8th. If you're submitting the hard copy, as long as you put it in the mail by January 8th, you're good. We don't have to receive it by the 8th. You just have to put it in the mail. That's what postmarked. I don't know if everybody knows what that term means, but it just means it has to be in the mail by the 8th. So just want to make sure that's clear. Let's see. It looks like right now that is our only question. We'll leave it open for a little bit. So really just to recap some of the things that both Tanya Sue and Tiffany shared. So again, deadline January 8th, that is a hard deadline. I will tell you in the past, we've had chapters who have submitted a day or two late, and there's always a reason, and the committee is pretty hard about it because the volume of applications, and you know, they assume if everybody else can make that deadline, they don't make exceptions. So that really is a hard deadline that needs to be met. If you're applying for the media awards, so newsletter, website, blog, those sorts of things, that is a separate application than the chapter achievements. Sometimes people get confused and try to submit it as one, but it's separate. Can't stress enough to read the guidelines and the criteria. Sometimes chapters, they do great things, but they're not considered as seriously because they did not follow the instructions. So again, read them carefully. If you have any questions, the next slide will have all of our emails. Certainly email us to ask. And then the other tip that I will reiterate is to go on our website and look at the past winners. Those are the ones that you sort of want to model after in both format and content. And we have winners back until I think 2008. So there's many applications on there to look at. So if you have some time, you can spend some time looking at those to get some different ideas. All right, so with that, I will put up, here is all of our contact information. I guess before we go, Tanya Sue, Tiffany, Sarah, any last tips or advice for people who are starting to look at the application?
People that are just now looking to submit for this year?
Yes.
If you're just now starting to look for this year, you have a lot of work cut out for you. So my tip would be definitely get started now. Download that criteria and guideline sheet, have it stapled to your wall. And you definitely need to reach out to all of the chairs of your chapter. Those guys are going to be the ones that know the ins and outs of all the events that were hosted that year. You're going to have to get used to being in constant contact with the chairs and the committee heads and most likely your chapter president. All the information you need is going to come from them. Numbers are your best friend. You want to showcase how strong your chapter is. You show it by showing how many members showed up, what y'all did, and just like just all numbers are going to be the best way to showcase how big the event was. Other than that, just make sure it's a very thorough application in the sense that you most likely won't be able to do it yourself. You're going to have a lot of help, a lot of teamwork to make this application. Your ASDA chapter is enormous. It's not run by just one person, so all of the people that made your past year possible is going to have some sort of input if you're making this application to showcase everything y'all did. So just be prepared to be talking to a lot of people up until the application deadline, and in regards to that deadline, definitely set that your personal deadline 2 weeks before it's actually due, because that deadline is always going to get pushed forward or back. I'm sorry, for some reason or another. It might not be due to you. It might be due to you waiting on information to get to you. It could be due to publishing issues, editing issues. Please have people read your application before you submit it. Have your whole team read it for proofreading, editing, making sure names are spelled right, numbers are correct, especially if you have charts. Make sure your chart numbers are correct, just to make sure everything is in order and good to go.
We actually have a couple more questions if you guys, while we were talking, a couple more came in. So one is, this would be more for Tanya, Sue, and Tiffany. What were some new events that Houston ASDA added to their application?
Yeah, so we were doing a lot last year, and we started some new initiatives that were a lot of fun. And so one thing that we launched last year, which was really helpful for a chapter, was an application, a mobile app, which was really nice, and we still use it from time to time. But it was kind of real and innovative when we launched it, and so that was really neat. So we were able to add that. I was doing Incisal Bites at the time. That was kind of a YouTube series that we had. It was a cooking show. That's right now in a little hiatus just because of just timing of how school goes. But that was so much fun. That was something that we really wanted to do. We wanted to have a YouTube series of some kind, so we launched that. We also kind of branded our happy hours. We called them Brews, Chews, and Dental News, and so that was pretty cool. And we kind of we themed a lot of different things, and so we kind of grouped our lunch and learns as well and kind of themed them. Same thing with our happy hours. We did a lot of great stuff with our advocacy team. Our advocacy team is always looking for new and innovative ways to get people excited about advocacy, and so we had a luau where students could sign up for AdPack. Yeah, we had a lot of great different events that we launched last year that I think really made us pop. But like I mentioned, it was kind of something that we've been building upon for a few years. And I'm sure I'm missing a few off the top of my head, but I know that our application is still up on the National ASDA website, and please feel free to reference it. And if there's any activity or event that you have questions on, shoot us an email, and we'll be glad to kind of break down what we did for those individual events.
Great. Sarah, this one probably is more for you. So someone is asking if we can share some examples of past creative applications. So some of the ones that fall into the creative or application design.
Yeah, so there's two different awards for application design. Most outstanding application design is one, and then the other one is most creative application. The outstanding design, the reason that we have two is because we got applications that were just beautifully well done. Like, they had wonderful photography in them, and they were like just gorgeous books that like you could sell for like coffee table books that people would buy. They were just like incredible. And then other chapters had just done some really fun things. Like, we have people last year create board games. Was that Houston who did the board game? Because it was something about like a map. I can't remember who, but then all the little pieces were.
I think it was Ohio State.
Ohio State, okay. And they all their pieces were their exact board, but then also they had like the national president and vice president as little board pieces, and just really fun, and they obviously took a lot of time on it, and it displayed cool things about their application, but it just is in a different sort of category than that like artistic skill that went into some of the other ones. So we wanted to highlight both of those chapters' efforts for that. We had someone hand in a trunk, and they had a passport in there with like a travel case. They had a passport and a bunch of other things around travel, and their whole ASDA application was built on travel. 2 years ago, I'm trying to think of all the someone did a patient chart, and the patient had ASDA fever, and yeah, so things along that line.
One comment about the creative. I love the creativity of the chapters. I mean, I think they do some really unique things. But if your chapter is at the point where you're just starting to put your application together, I would suggest that you focus on the content rather than the creativeness. Because really, when it comes down to it, what the committee is looking for is what did your chapter do? So the quality of the events and the activities and things like that, displaying that so it's just in a nice sort of simple, clean format is perfectly acceptable. And you can add a little flair to it, certainly. But again, if time is of the essence or you don't have a lot of people, the most critical part of the application is really the content. Next question, and I guess any of you could maybe answer this in regards to your own chapters. So this person is asking, when do you all do elections in comparison to annual session? We don't do ours until spring, so the start of our year has the end of the last administration, which wasn't as active this year. Has anyone else run into this problem and has a Gold Crown application that is loaded on the back end with events compared to the start? So it looks like you're kind of overlapping leadership cycles, and so your activities may not be balanced. I don't know, have any of you had that experience?
So at Houston, we do our elections. We have a track position, but we do our initial elections in the fall. Sorry, so around September, November. But we don't do our transition until annual session. And so the nice thing about the track positions is that people stay on board throughout the 4 years, which is kind of nice. So we can always reference those leaders that served in that last position, and they kind of stay throughout their 4 years. But we do have appointed positions that change, and those change in the spring. But that can be, so we really don't suffer from that, but that can be a challenge. And I know that I've spoken to a lot of different chapters, and we really do. I know that we've talked as far as National ASDA goes, but we really do encourage a lot of the chapters to try and do their turnover at the same time that National ASDA does theirs, which is at annual session every year.
Yeah, so because the deadlines are in January, it does kind of, your Gold Crown application a lot of times just follows the calendar year that now the schools will follow. That's how it is at Marquette, and so a lot of the stuff that you're putting to a couple months of the events that you're putting on your application may not be when you were particularly on the exec board, but they were part of things that your chapter did, so you're still going to highlight them. I will say that the applications don't have dates on them. You're not going to you don't necessarily have to put January 1st we did X, Y, and Z. We just expect that they do happen in that the calendar year from the last application to be due. So even if you have a bunch of events, I'm saying that the application might not we may not know that they all happened within the last 6 months. It would just look like you had a bunch of events happen that year, if that's helpful.
That's a good point, and I think the other thing is that if that's the case with the chapter where there were not as much activity and involvement at the beginning of the year and there was at the end, to me that's good criteria for a most improved. So if you can demonstrate that your chapter's made an effort with the new administration, to make some changes, I would think that that's a good category to apply to. So. So the last question, and this again kind of goes back to the creative. So he said, I know last year's creative application was a board game, which we mentioned, and I know judges value original ideas and not repetition. If I started making a cribbage board game before I even went to annual, is it worth submitting this? I honestly don't. Not many judges are repeat, so besides Sarah and I, no one else would probably know what was submitted last year. So, but again, if you're just getting started, again, I'll reiterate, just focus on the content. If you have the content, then certainly be creative.
And don't forget, you want to add your own personal touch. And so even if you have a similar idea from the previous year, add your own chapter twist to it, and I think that'll really stand out to the judges. And regardless if you're just starting or not, your holidays or your break will kind of be filled with applying for this and filling out that application. And so that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that brings us to the end. So once again, I want to thank our presenters, so Tanya Sue and Tiffany from Texas Houston, and also Sarah, our Council on Membership Chair. So again, January 8th, don't forget that deadline, visit the website, and then again, there's our emails if you have any questions. So we have increased the number of applications every year. We're not at 66 yet, but maybe this will be the year. I sure hope so. So, all right, with that, everyone have a great evening.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.